The Blue and the Grey, the American Civil War. This sad, strange war marked the end of slavery, unified the American states, and ensured the strength of the Constitution. The American Civil War, waged between the northern states and the breakaway South, was the most tragic event in American history, and its impact is still felt today, more than 150 years after the last shot was fired. No type of warfare is as cruel as civil war, in which the people of one nation fight each other. Families are divided and brother kills brother. The Lincolns were no exception. Abraham Lincoln's wife lost 3 brothers in the war, all of them fighting against her husband and what he stood for. The causes of the war were complicated, but in the end came down to the fact that the Southern way of life was based upon a slave labor economy. Though slavery had been condemned and abandoned by the rest of the civilized world, it still flourished in the American South because of the huge demand for cheap cotton to supply the cloth factories of Britain and other countries. The slaves grew the cotton for their masters on huge farms known as plantations. When vast new territories were opened up in the West, many in the South wanted to introduce slavery there as well. But the northern states and those along the eastern seaboard had been built by people who believed in democracy and freedom, and for some years before the war started northerners and helped organize escaped routes for runaway slaves. When Abraham Lincoln was elected with a policy of keeping slavery in check, most of the southern states decided to leave the United States and form what they called the Confederacy, with a president of their own, a former soldier named Jefferson Davis. The Confederates then seized all the army forts in their area, and when the garrison of Fort Sumter resisted, the rebels attacked and captured it. That attack, just before dawn on the 12th of April 1861, marked the start of the war between the Blues and the Grey, as it is sometimes called because of the colours of the uniforms of the Unionist, Northern and rebel Southern armies. The rebel South had hardly any industry and a free population of less than 6 million, and almost 4 million slaves, with which to face the North's 22 million. It hoped, however, for support from its major cotton customers, Britain and France. The South also had the most of the best army leaders, including the best of them all, General Robert E. Lee. He was asked by Lincoln to be commander of the Union forces, but he rode home to Virginia to fight for the South. Lee actually opposed slavery, but considered it a matter of honor to support his fellow Southerners. Another famous rebel leader was General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, whose clever and dashing tactics kept the Northern armies on the run. The rebel yell, an eerie scream they made when charging, was very frightening to the Unionists. Only 190 kilometers separated the United States capital, Washington, from the rebel capital of Richmond in Virginia, and most people in the North assumed that the war would be over quickly. Picnic parties accompanied the hastily raised army of 35,000 men that jauntily set out from Washington at the start of the war, but the rebels sent it reeling all the way back. The picnic turned into a panic. It took the armies of the North 4 years to advance those 190 kilometers, and in that time 620,000 soldiers died, and the South was turned into a wasteland. Many of the battles became desperate hand-to-hand struggles after massed ranks of charging infantry and cavalry had been cut to shreds by the increasingly powerful guns and rifles that were being manufactured. Thousands of men died or suffered dreadful wounds, and the battles names like Shiloh, Antietam, and Gettysburg still send a shudder through Americans. This was in many ways one of the first modern wars of the Industrial Revolution, where machines were turned into killing instead of manufacturing. Unable to make any headway with a direct assault, Lincoln's strategy was to encircle and slowly squeeze the South with a naval blockade all around the southern coastline. But the North finally forced General Lee to surrender in April 1865 after a Union army under General William T. Sherman had marched through the heart of the South, ruthlessly burning land and destroying all buildings as he went. Although slavery was a major issue in the cause of the war, Lincoln spoke against the expansion of slavery rather than its total abolition. But as soon as he felt the rebel army could be beaten, Abraham Lincoln issued his Emancipation Proclamation, which was a declaration to free the slaves. But only in 1865, the last year of the war, did Congress in Washington vote to abolish slavery throughout the United States. It was said that a strong man embraced each other with tears, so great was the emotion of the occasion.